Success seems to be connected with action. Successful people keep moving. They make mistakes, but they don't quit. Conrad Hilton. Today's episode is going to be a little bit more nuts and bolts than the podcast is usually. But let's say you've decided, I'm about to start my business. You know you want to, or you've inadvertently found yourself falling into your own business. What do you do next? How do you make sure you set up everything properly? Welcome to the Stitch for Success podcast. I'm your host, Monica Allen. I'm a wife, mom, daughter, entrepreneur, author, friend, and lifelong learner. For over 8 years, I was trapped in corporate America and dreamed of escaping. I took the leap over 15 years ago, retiring from corporate. With just $700 and an idea, over the years we have grown multiple six-figure and seven-figure brands. I have mentored and employed dozens of other people along the way. The road has not been easy. I have battle wounds, bruises, and scars to prove it. And on this podcast, I share lessons learned from my failures and successes. You will also learn from other business owners who have become stitched for success as they pursue their entrepreneurial passions. My goal and hope for you is that you can learn from our mistakes and our wins and have an extremely successful business that stands the test of time. As I prepare for different podcast episodes, I try to think back to when we initially started our business and think back to the things that I wish someone would have shared with us in the beginning when we were just getting started. And one thing that I thought about recently is that I wish someone would have told us just all of the requirements that would be needed from the government when starting a business. And so I thought I would put this together in one concise episode, and I'm sure I won't cover every single thing, but these are a few things that just really stand out in my mind that we didn't know initially and just kind of had to take one step at a time and figure it out. Now, I'm not a lawyer, so there are some things that you definitely need to consult your attorney on, and I also don't know the state and local municipality laws and rules where you are running your business. So you do want to make sure that you check those websites so you're getting done exactly what you need to get done and having your I's dotted and T's crossed accordingly based on your regulations in your area. And that way you can make sure your business is set up correctly from the very beginning. One thing you want to do is check into your business license requirements based on where your business is located. For us here in Atlanta, we have to hold a City of Atlanta business license. It has to be registered for. I don't know if this is true today, but when we initially started our business and even a few years ago when I started another business, we had to physically go down to the office and register the new business or for the business license. So you want to check your city, check in your city. You also want to just check the website and see if that is something you need. Do you need it if your business is at home, or do you only need it if you have a physical location? You want to make sure you know that, because here in Atlanta, I've had a few surprise visits where the inspector is looking for that registration hanging on your wall each year. So you want to make sure that you have your business license to operate in whatever city you're in if that's required. Second, you want to make sure you get registered with your state. Here in Georgia, you have to register with the Secretary of State. You also have to renew that on an annual basis. I think this is probably a requirement for most states because they want to know what businesses are being conducted in their state. It helps them for statistical purposes. It also helps them for funding purposes, from getting money from the federal government. So most states do require that businesses are registered, but you want to check with your state to make sure that you're completing all the correct paperwork and making sure you're doing things properly. Though I'm not giving you these things in a particular order, because in some states you may have to have your Secretary of State registration before you can get your city registration, or vice versa. So I'm not exactly sure what order you may need to do this in your state. But next, you also want to set up a separate bank account for your business. You don't want to run your business revenue or expenses through your personal checking or your personal savings. If you're a sole proprietor, you may be tempted to keep it all together, but I want to warn you against this because you don't necessarily know how fast your business may grow, and it's truly advantageous to know exactly how much money your business is making, how much you're spending. So it's very important to set up separate banking accounts for your business from your personal. And initially, if you're just doing a side hustle and you don't quite know where the business is going, I can see you being just a sole proprietor. It's just you don't have any employees, and that's fine. You can do it for a little bit, but I would still recommend setting up a separate account just to make sure that you know exactly what is going on with your business. And most of the time when you go to the bank, they are going to want to see that business license, or they're going to want to see that Secretary of State or the state registration, so they will open you an actual business account. So just make sure you do that. The next step is to get your employer identification number from the Internal Revenue Service, or it's also known as an EIN. Now, we actually got this after setting up a bank account, because originally when we started our business, it was a side hustle. We weren't doing it full time. We weren't bringing in a whole bunch of revenue. We weren't incorporated yet. We were just operating as sole proprietors. However, about a year after seeing this business could possibly take off, we decided to incorporate. Well, when we incorporated, we went to see an attorney. We had all of the proper partnership documents drawn up, and we ended up getting our EIN number. The EIN number is important because it allows you to file your company taxes properly each year. It also allows you, once you have employees, to pay into your payroll taxes under that number. So it's really important that you have your EIN number once you incorporate and once you begin hiring employees. Now, depending on what you are selling or what type of service you are providing, you also may need to apply for a sales tax exemption certificate. What this allows you to do is to purchase wholesale goods without having to pay tax on them. Now, some states don't have sales tax, so that might not be a thing. But again, you want to look at your state, look at your city. Here in Atlanta, there is a state tax, county tax, and a local Atlanta city tax that all is wrapped up into a sales tax number when someone checks out at a register in the city of Atlanta. Of course, counties around the metro are different. So you want to just make sure, though, that if you are selling goods and you're not the end user, that you have a sales tax exemption certificate. Most of your vendors that you're using will ask you for this because they don't want to get in trouble. They have to have that certificate on file to show the reason they're not charging you sales tax. So you want to apply for that. And last but not least, a couple of other registrations that you will need to take care of, especially once you have employees, is you want to register with the Department of Labor. And every state should have a labor department. Now, they may work a little bit differently, but every state has one. Another is the Department of Revenue. They collect the sales tax dollars that are taken at the register that we just discussed. And the Department of Revenue here in Georgia takes care of taxes that employees pay from their paycheck into the state coffers. So those numbers have to be registered, or you have to get those numbers from the state in order to file things properly. With the Department of Labor, that allows a percentage of every dollar you pay your employee to go towards the unemployment fund here in the state. And you pay that up to a certain amount each year. I believe now in Georgia it's still $8,000 each year, but you pay that percentage of that $8,000 for each employee per year, and that goes into the unemployment bank. So if an employee is ever unemployed, then they can actually file for unemployment and get money from that account if they are approved. So those are just a few of the registrations that you need to keep in mind when you do start your business. And I don't want any of these things for any of these things to slow you down. They are things that have to be done, but just take one step at a time. And one of the reasons I really wanted to go over all of these in one podcast is, again, because when Ethan and I started, we had to just piecemeal and put it all together. It felt like every month or two we would find out that there was something else we needed to do, some other registration that we needed to take care of and wait for the response and get the number and all of that type of thing. So I want you to be in an advantage. Look at your state and your city and determine what is needed from the appropriate websites in those areas. There's probably still going to be something that pops up, but hopefully these things will get you going and help you move forward just a little bit faster. And just one last thought, something that I did not cover previously is if you are in a specific sector, there are certain things that have additional requirements. For instance, restaurants. If you are providing any type of food services and or providing alcohol, you will have different requirements for that. If you are a salon, there may be a different registration and requirement for that. So keep those things in mind. Those aren't businesses that I'm in, so I'm not as familiar, but make sure you research those types of things as well. Thank you so much for listening to the Stitch for Success podcast. I'm so happy that you chose to listen today. If you have not already, please subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. This helps the podcast continue to grow and hopefully make a difference. If you want to continue any part of this conversation, please email me at stitchforsuccess@gmail.com, or you can direct message me on Instagram at stitchforsuccess. I would love if you would follow me on Instagram as well. I post inspirational quotes, and I also enjoy sharing some of the creative projects we're working on. Lastly, if you are interested in a complimentary coaching session, please visit stitchforsuccess.com and click at the top of the page to complete the form to sign up. Thanks so much for listening. Have a great one.